Most injury cases from an Uber accident are worth very little. Now, I know what you may be thinking. I see billboards everywhere that show huge settlements. Here is the deal. Those big settlements are not the average settlement. Often, the advertised settlement is one of the lawyer's best settlements. They're showing you their best work. I heard a great saying at a personal injury seminar many years ago, and it still applies today. The saying is, when a plane lands, it doesn't make the news. This means that the most common events don't make the news. Thus, you're not going to see the most common settlements on billboards or in TV ads or in the news. If the most common settlements from Uber accidents were on billboards and TV ads, you'd see many settlements for just $1,000 to $3,000 or so. I'll reveal why in just a moment. But first, let's look at which injuries are worth the most in Uber accident cases. There are several injuries that have a full value of pain and suffering that may be over $1 million. I'll expose what they are in a few seconds. But first, you need to understand what full settlement value means. It's the value assuming that someone else is 100% at fault and they caused your injury. In an Uber accident, there's no guarantee that someone else is going to be 100% at fault for causing your crash. So, for settlement purposes, you may need to reduce the full value of your case if any of the following apply. You have some fault in the accident, or you have difficulty proving that the accident caused or aggravated your injury. The most common injuries that likely have a full value of $1 million or more for pain and suffering are any of the following: a moderate or severe brain injury, an injury that requires many surgeries and leaves you with lots of pain, or death. Let's assume that you have a moderate brain injury from an Uber accident. To keep it simple, let's assume that the full value of your pain and suffering is $1 million. In this instance, do you know which of the following scenarios you'd be most likely to get paid $1 million? Scenario 1, you're an Uber passenger and the Uber driver is careless and crashes. Scenario 2, you're in an Uber and another car was at fault. Scenario 3, you're in another car and the Uber driver had the app on but hadn't accepted a ride request and was driving carelessly. And scenario 4, you're in another car and the Uber driver had accepted a ride request and is at fault. If you chose scenarios 1 and 4, you would be correct. This is because if the Uber driver had accepted a ride request and the Uber driver was driving carelessly, Uber has a $1 million insurance policy. With a moderate brain injury or another high-value injury, you want Uber to have a large insurance limit. This is because there will be enough money to pay for your claim's fair value. If you're a passenger in this instance, you can make your claim against Uber's $1 million of insurance coverage. The same is true if you were in the other car that's not at fault. For purposes of your claim, you'd also hope that no one else is hurt in the accident. This is because they'll be competing with you to get Uber's $1 million liability insurance limit. Think of Uber's insurance limit as a whole pizza shared among everyone making claims after the accident. Each slice represents one person's share of the total coverage. But no matter how many people are involved, Uber's insurance company never has to provide more than the whole pizza, $1 million in total. For example, let's say someone else has the same value injury as you. Let's assume you have a moderate brain injury and we're estimating it could be worth $1 million in pain and suffering. In this instance, you'd split the $1 million insurance limit with the other person making the claim. Basically, you'd each get 50% of the $1 million in available insurance, which is $500,000. So your $1 million claim against the Uber driver can quickly get cut in half if someone else has a similar sized claim. If you've been injured in an Uber accident in Florida or live in Florida and you think that someone else may be at fault, click on the link in the description below to see if I could be the lawyer for you. To expose why many Uber accident cases aren't worth much, let's quickly look at scenario 2, which is you're in an Uber and another car is at fault. In this instance, Uber's insurance policy doesn't owe you any money. They don't owe you money because the Uber driver didn't do anything wrong. So you may say, that's no big deal. I'll just make a claim against the other driver, the at-fault driver's insurance. To reveal why this may be a huge problem, let's look at a real case. Ray was driving an Uber with a passenger in Miami, Florida. An oncoming van made a left turn and the front of Ray's car struck the front of the van. Police came to the scene, but paramedics were not called. In fact, the police report stated that there were no injuries. The front and driver's side of Ray's car was damaged. But Ray had back pain and his girlfriend drove him to the hospital. They put a neck collar on him to keep his spine straight. While there, the hospital took a CT scan of his back and saw that he had a small fracture in his spine. Ray hired me as his injury lawyer. The doctor admitted him to the hospital for severe upper back pain. In other words, the hospital gave him a room to spend the night. He complained of bad pain and they kept him there for 6 days. When they released him, he followed up with the spine doctor. He also got physical therapy on his back. But his 6-day hospital stay left him with a huge hospital bill. The neurosurgeon who saw Ray at the hospital said that he couldn't tell if the fracture of the spine was caused by the accident. And this was not good for Ray's case. This is because it's your burden to prove that the accident caused your injury. Ray also had a couple of disc protrusions in his lower back and pain. He got an epidural steroid injection to his lower back. After a fight, I got the Vans insurance company to finally fix Ray's car. Then, after another battle, I got the Vans insurance company to offer $150,000 for Ray's injury case. Then, through aggressive negotiations, I finally persuaded them to pay $260,000 to settle Ray's personal injury case. After paying his medical bills, his Medicaid health plan, and my lawyer's fees and costs, he got over $167,900 in his pocket, and he was thrilled. Ray was very lucky that the van had a large insurance policy. But here's the harsh reality if you're in an Uber, whether as a passenger or driver in an accident. The more common scenario is that the driver who hits you has no bodily injury insurance or very little insurance. In fact, it's very common for the other driver to have just $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000 of insurance. And if your case is worth a lot and the at-fault car has no bodily injury liability insurance or a small limit, you'd likely be left with just one option. And that is to make an uninsured or underinsured motorist insurance claim. It's also called or UIM coverage. But this assumes that you have or UIM coverage on your car. Did you know that your or UIM auto insurance covers you even if you weren't in your car at the time of the crash? So it covers you when you're in an Uber, and that is good news for you. The bad news is that most car owners don't have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And of the small percentage of car owners who have most have a low limit like $10,000 or $15,000 or so. Now let's quickly look at scenario 3. You're in another car and the Uber driver had the app on but hadn't accepted a ride request and was driving carelessly. If your case is worth much more than $50,000 in this instance, there's a good chance that you won't get paid fair value for your case. This is because in this instance, Uber only has $50,000 per person of bodily injury liability coverage and $100,000 per accident. This means that the most that Uber's insurance company owes you is $50,000, and the most that Uber owes everyone combined is $100,000 per accident. If you're badly injured, you'll want no more than one other person making a claim. Otherwise, your claims will be competing against them for the same insurance limit. For example, let's assume 3 people in total were in your car when an Uber driver crashes into you. We're assuming the Uber had the app on but wasn't engaged in a ride and you all have the same injury. None of you is going to get paid fair value from Uber's insurance company for your case. You'll likely only get 33% of Uber's $100,000 per accident limit, which is $33,333. So, as you've seen now, if you're badly injured, you usually want the Uber driver to be engaged in a ride. This is so you have access to their $1 million liability policy and not their much smaller $50,000 per person policy. But what do I consider a bad injury to be? Basically, if you have any of the following injuries, the full value of pain and suffering is usually worth $50,000 or more. A herniated disc, a broken bone, a tear of your ligament, tendon, or muscle, a bad scar or burn, a concussion with continued memory or processing issues, or surgery. If you have any of those injuries and the Uber driver is at fault, your best case is that they were engaged in a ride. This is so there's enough insurance to pay for the fair value of your case. What about if all you have is pain, but you don't have a broken bone or a tear in your ligament or tendon? I'm talking about where you're in an Uber accident, but you only have pain in your back, neck, shoulder, knee, or any other body part. These are called soft tissue injuries. On your best day, you're typically looking at a $25,000 settlement. However, this assumes that 5 things happen. Number 1, someone else is clearly at fault for the accident. Number 2, there is a lot of damage to the car or trucks involved. Number 3, you got medical treatment shortly after the accident. Number 4, your out-of-pocket medical bills are large. Number 5, the Uber driver had the app on and was at fault, or if the other driver was at fault, they have bodily injury liability insurance, or you have uninsured motorist insurance. But getting a $25,000 settlement for soft tissue injuries usually is your best day. On the flip side, most Uber car accident settlements are small. The average payout is likely way under $25,000. This is because in most Uber accidents, you won't be badly injured. And even if you're injured, most people either don't go to the hospital or doctor. And of those who do, most just go to one medical visit or so. If that's all the medical treatment you get, don't expect a big settlement, but it can get much worse. If there's little damage to the cars involved in your accident and you just have pain in your neck, your back, your shoulder, or knee, you may not get more than $1,000 to $4,000 or so. That's because juries often don't award much for pain and suffering compensation if you don't have a broken bone, a ligament tear, or major problem. They usually don't award much money for injuries that you can't clearly see on an X-ray or MRI. And this is especially true if there isn't much damage to the cars involved in the accident. They may assume you couldn't have been badly injured if the cars weren't damaged a lot. But that's not it. In many no-fault states like Florida, you often need a permanent injury in order to get a penny or more for pain and suffering. To fight back against all the defenses that you'll face, you need to use easy claim tricks to get the insurance company to pay you what you are entitled to. Because the insurance company will try to poke holes in your case to deny your claim or pay you a tiny amount. I reveal several proven claim tactics to easily fight back in the video that's on screen, so watch it now. And if you're injured in an Uber accident in Florida or live in Florida and you think that someone else may be at fault, click on the link in the description below to see if I could be the lawyer for you.